Welcome to another episode of Millionaire's Mind. Now, I'm really glad that you could join us this evening. And as always, I am your host, Lucy Riley. Now, this is the show that brings to you the information on how to grow your business and scale out. But today we will be talking about retirement. When is the best time to start planning for your retirement? Because it's a path and a road and a destination that ideally we should all get to and plan for that matter. Now, you can interact with us on social media platforms. That's at Ebru TV or myself at Lucy Riley, or sending in your text messages to 4920. Now, today I am joined by Ben Kivwitu, who is a financial expert. Thank you so much for joining us today. Karibu sana. Kindly introduce yourself a little bit and tell us what exactly you do.
Thank you so much, Lucy. My name is Benson Kivwitu. I'm a finance expert and also a PhD candidate at University of Nairobi. So purely, I'm an expert in that space, finance.
Fantastic. So today we are talking about retirement. And first things first, when do most people retire and when is the ideal time to retire?
Well, retirement is a term that talks of purely describes a time when you move from the active workplace and probably go down there to get yourself moving on other things. But I want to say that when you look at like in our country, the government retirement, compulsory retirement age is 60 years, but we have what we call early retirement, and also there is what we call, voluntarily retirement. That's when you retire, or rather you retire when you feel like.
Right.
Yes.
And so young people right now who are watching, young entrepreneurs, sometimes get very excited about the idea of not working any longer for somebody. So you've talked about early retirement. So for a young person in business, would you advise them to wait until 60 or starting early is okay? And what really are the factors that should help guide you to decide, now this is a good time for me to be retiring?
Thank you so much. I think one of the guides to retirement is ideally we are nurtured differently. And I think right now we are in a technology era where young people want to play themselves. And I think traditionally speaking, people used to retire at the age of 60 years, but right now people retire even at the age of 45 or even at the age of 50. But I would recommend 45, 50 is a good time to retire, but you also need to really plan yourself. And I think the most important bit of it is how much you plan yourself, because I think planning is the basic thing. There's a saying that says that retirement is going for an endless vacation. So I think just like going for vacation, but again, there are many other determinants on why you should go on retirement early, because sometimes you might not do it because of factors that I'll share in the course of this conversation.
Yeah, I like that you've said it's an endless vacation, which is very interesting, because considering the economy that we are living in and sometimes lack of planning, you'll find that even as you retire at that age of 50 or 55, by 60 or 65, the money that you had been putting aside is not enough. So I want to understand, moving on to our next question, is how much money is enough money, or how much should you be putting aside to retire?
Now, allow me to just highlight something, especially when it comes to retirement. When you retire, there are a number of things that you're not able to do. For example, assuming you retire at the normal age, that is 60 years of age. At that time, your energy goes down. At that time, you're not getting your normal monthly pay. That means you are not depending on the money that you've saved. At that time, your health also gets to degrade a little bit. That means you need a lot of, attention to your health. The other thing is at the same time you're not active like you were, because right now you're moving up and down. You can be active in the course of the day. But I think 45 would be a good time to retire, but then the amount of money that you need to save depends on your plan for the future, because at that time the expenses will be very different, and you need money that will take care of your medical expense, and you also need to be liquid. You also need to take care of a few bills here and there. So that question, I wouldn't say the amount, but it depends on what you want, especially when you retire.
And so that amount, now that we can't really give a specific figure, what does it really depend on? Is it the lifestyle that you've been living? Is it what you would want to, what exactly will determine that end figure for a young person?
Okay, so one of the things I'll mention is, as we talk, when you look at our friends, our parents who have retired, their medical bills are on a higher trend. That means anybody who want to save money that will take care of, one, for the medical expense. Okay. Number two, there is no the daily, monthly salary that comes in right now. That means you will maybe depend on pension. And the amount of pension that you paid is barely like 10% of the amount of money that you're earning, like on a monthly basis right now. If I'm earning, let's say 200,000, about 20,000 on a monthly basis. So you can imagine you're used to spending 200,000 shillings, then you don't have that money. So that will be another factor. How do you foresee your life that time? Medical bill, you need to buy a good policy that will take care of you, because the expenses also in terms of the medical bills are on the higher end. So that means you're going to spend more and more in the hospital. Then you also need to do a few errands here and there, do a vacation here and there. So that is also another factor. But honestly speaking, it depends on the life that you want to live after the compulsory retirement. And for business people, you can make that choice. You can decide after 50, I don't want to work. You can now look forward to other opportunities here and there that are not pegged on that monthly pay. That is also retirement.
Right.
Yes.
So even maybe later on, you can also describe on maybe a percentage, if I could work out a rough figure.
Yes.
Is there a way to work out a rough figure based on how much you're currently earning? Say, for example, the 200,000 Kenya shillings, and then 10% of that.
Yes.
Ideally then, over the next maybe 20 working years, if every single month is 20,000,
yes,
keeping aside, then you have a rough idea of maybe 1 million or 2 million or 10 million is enough for you,
yes,
to actually settle down. But before we get that, a lot of people pay the NSSF, right?
Yes.
How do you claim this? And is it really enough to sustain you when you're getting into retirement, the Social Security Fund?
One of the things I'll mention and say, we have different kinds of plans, and that is a government kind of a plan, because the government has interest when it comes to the retirement of its citizens. But I'll also say there is what we call occupational pension, because if you're employed, then that means at the end of it, there is money that will come, meaning at the end of the, let's say, the voluntary retirement, probably that starts at, let's say, 50 years, or the compulsory at 60 years. That means at that particular time you'll get the money from your employer. The money that is given by your employer, sometimes it usually a portion, like the amount of money that you've saved, it could be, let's say, a third of that. Then the other amount of money, the 2/3, is a portion to what we call the monthly monies that you get as pension. But other than NSSF, I want to probably put some light into that. Then there's what we call a personal pension plan, where I decide I want to start putting in money, not for my employer, putting in money. Then a time comes when now at 50 I can access that money. Then lastly is what you talked about. That is the NSSF. These are government driven kind of a pension plan. When you look at the amounts of money that they deduct from the people who are employed, it's really minimal. That means that is just a boost to anybody or anyone who retires. So I wouldn't say that that is something to depend so much on, because it's not really comparable to even the pension money that you get from probably your occupation or from your own plan.
Right. So what I'm gathering from you is that over and above the government having the Social Security Fund, you need to have a personal pension fund,
yes,
in order for you to prepare for retirement as well as other sources. So then you talked about healthcare. So how much really would ideally healthcare cost during retirement? I mean, you said you have to have an estimate of how much you would need, but you know, when you're in your 60s, ideally, that's a stage where you're not, or 50s plus, you're not quite sure what kind of monies you would have. So would you perhaps guide the viewers on how much you would need?
One of the things that I will say is, like I said, at that age, your expenses begin to move up. And one of the things I'll say is, in as much as probably you'll move up country and you're not able to, have the normal commuter, expenses and other rental expenses, for me, I will say that it will be very important for anybody to look for other streams of income. And that will also sustain you at that time, other than what you've saved. Pension will be one of the streams of income. They are what we call, like I said, when you're paid, they are the lump sum, a third of the amount of money that you've, let's say, saved over time, or whatever you've been contributing. There is the two-thirds that remains. But out of this, a third that you get home, you can also buy what you call an annuity, whereby you still get repayments over time and over time. And beyond that, you can also have other sources of income, like putting up some business in the course of your life, or beginning some consultancy and all that kind of a thing. So that time, you will not purely depend on pension. Because when you talk about pension for purposes of meeting your, all those bills, the mathematics and they work. And from where I see it from a finance perspective, that math, and that's why probably I'm trying not to give a specific amount amount of money, is because the medical bills move up. The frequency of visiting the hospital moves up. You also begin to have probably a few checks here and there to the hospital, other than the medical bills that you pay specifically for, maybe if you're unwell. So for me, I would recommend for any young person to begin planning, one, by the normal contribution, of course, like looking for the personal pension plan, like I said, but also in addition to that, in as much as there is the occupational pension and the NSSF, start something that you know over that time will begin to give you income at that time. It could be even real estate investment. You've seen people in the villages, they move and put up something that will give you like 10 or 30,000. You're getting something. That way you will be in a good position to live longer. And one of the statistics I didn't share to you is that many people have done different researches, especially on the issue of retirement and the death of people. And, when you look at the rate at which people die after retirement is not comparable to when they are working. Reasons, when I was looking at different people have written different areas, especially on that space of pension. The males die twice as much as the females. But also with the life expectancy of, like in the country, the latest is 66.7 years. That means if you retire at 60, that means within 7 years or 8 years, you are likely to go. And then it shows that for men, it will take them like, let's say 8 years, and for women, it will take them like 10 years over that period of time. There are drivers that accelerate death of people after retirement. And some of these things are the strains that people get, the shock outside there, your activity begins to reduce, and now you cannot move like you're moving before. Your energy levels begin to come down. You are not so much active like before. So I think we need to prepare as early as young people, and also plan and look for other sources of income that will boost that pension that you'll have accumulated to take care of the bills that begin to accelerate at that end.
Now let's talk a little bit about investing, right, in that retirement savings. I know you've talked about annuity, you've talked about real estate, and perhaps even consultancy, or even setting up businesses. Remember, this is retirement, but it seems more or less that if you're going to be setting up businesses again, you're still working. So really, can you just dive a little bit more into where a person can invest their retirement savings?
Okay. Now, one of the things that I will mention, especially when it comes to investment for young people, and especially when we're investing for retirement, first thing that I would recommend is try take loans as much as you can, and try by the time you're going for retirement, you've paid your loans. Because you can imagine you have loans to pay, and the amount of income that you're getting right there at the end is very minimal. That's very important, because that has a net effect on your saving. Because assuming you have saved and you're getting, let's say, a pension of 20,000, and you have probably a medical plan of 10,000, you have 10 remaining, and you're paying a loan of 15,000, that means you will be strained, you'll be stressed. So the first thing is try as much as possible to pay off all your loans. Then after that, into investment again. There is the narrative that at some point in life, you'll be wanting to travel here and there when you retire. That's why mostly when you see the Western world, all people come around. But if you go to, let's say, at the coast, you'll be shocked. Very few old people right there. So that means at that point you might not have sufficient enough to pay for those leisure activities. Back to the subject of investment. The next and the other thing that I'll talk about is the issue of investing in stock. You know, there's stock market. You go buy shares, and at some point in your life you'll be in a position to recover that. And you see, investment could be quite liquid, and other kinds of investment could not be liquid. Example is having a vehicle. A vehicle is an investment in as much as it depreciates, but you can't sell that within a day. Piece of land you can't sell. But then over time there are those liquid investments. And we are talking of an example of like when you have money in a fixed deposit in a bank, that is still an investment. When we have an investment, let's say like you have bought stocks, that is something that you can convert easily. Other than that, there is what you call investment that give you returns over time. And that is where we now go to the issue of annuities and the issue of rental income. That means over time you'll be getting returns from that kind of investment. We have insurance companies and even financial institutions in this country that are able to give you guidelines and some of the ways that you can invest. And there are diverse ways of investment, especially when it comes to the insurance companies in the country. The likes of a personal pension plan, the fixed deposit kind of investments. Then there are other kinds of investments like in agribusiness. I know there are people who will do like 100 mango trees and they will be like, in 10 years I will have this. So there are many other ways, but those are just to mention some of the ways that you can invest into your future. And I think that is a very important narrative that people should prepare right now. The period of life that you live, or the time that you will take after retirement will depend on how prepared you will be. Otherwise, some of us will die after 2 years of retirement, others will die after 10 years. And by the way, I buried my grandfather in January, and it was 120 years. So you can imagine, wow, almost double, wow, yeah, of the retirement age. Yeah. Some of the questions that you'd ask yourself will be, what would be a driver to that? In as much as previously he was employed by the white settlers and all that, he went back and retired, but he was so active on ground, doing agribusiness, all that kind of a thing. And that way, I think that is one of the ways of encouraging our young people, that your life after retirement will depend on how much you prepare right now.
Fantastic. I mean, already you've gotten some very important nuggets. Looking at real estate, it seems to be a place that young people can also begin early to set up for their retirement, as well as you've talked about stocks and perhaps even other investment platforms such as even insurance and annuities and so forth and so on. But then again, what are the 5 stages of retirement? We've realized that there are a couple of stages to retirement, and each one of them plays an important role, and you see that it even becomes difficult with time. You've said that you've been spending, or rather you've been putting aside, let's say 20,000 as an example, and now it's time to take out money from where you've been saving, right? And yes, that can be a bit difficult and a bit scary. But let's first talk about the 5 stages of retirement. What are they and what are their importances?
I'll begin by saying that when it comes to the phases and the stages and the steps of retirement, there are many narratives around it, because there are those who will talk about 3 of them, there are those who will talk about 10 of them. But for me, I think retirement begins as soon as you start, let's say you're done with the university, or even when you're in the university or when you're in college, because that is a time when you are young and your expenses are a bit low. You can save, you can put some money aside. At that time, probably you're staying with your parents, you're not able to do what? You are not paying rent, or that kind of a thing. Then the next phase would be the time when now you get employed. There's a phase when you get employed, and there's a joke that people in the market will say, when you get your first salary, you make fun, you use it with your friends. You don't plan for it. But I think those are some of the loopholes and some of the areas that you can easily take advantage of. That phase when you've just gotten newly employed, and over that time when you don't have a family, when probably you don't have many expenses. And then after that, there's a time now when you begin to have children, when you are in the process of trying to nurture other people. You have people who are beneficiaries and people are depending on you, or rather you have dependents. That means at that phase, you can also, invest into your retirement. But again, your capacity to save at that time is not as compared to when you didn't have a family. Then after that, of course, there's a phase that moves to about 45 years, or let's say 50, where probably your children are beginning to clear the university, colleges. The income now begins coming back, whereby maybe some of your children are even giving you income. So that time you can also be in a position to get more money to save. And then of course there is now the final phase of it, where now you move from work, now you are in the village. And also when you are even after retirement, after 60, the phase begins to move, because at some point you have money, you have cash flow, then at some point you exhaust the amount. So you're now depending on the streams that come probably on a monthly basis if you have not planned yourself. So the requirement for even that phase is more advanced, because that time your age has moved to another level. Then now things are really on the other end.
Right. Now, if you could give a parting shot
Yes.
to young people who are listening and watching in today,
Yes.
what would you tell them matters retirement, planning? As I can see, I know we couldn't get into depth, but we've talked about various platforms where young people can begin to invest right now. And it might be a challenge maybe to choose which one is the best, but perhaps if you can give them advice on where they should start, when they should start, and what they should be looking forward to when it comes to retirement.
Thank you so much. To all my viewers, I want to tell you that for all the young people, that we need to start now. Starting is now. There's a saying that comes and says that once you retire, do not retire your mind. That means for the young people, start saving now. There are different ways of saving, like I said, but let's try and invest as much as possible in different ways, like I mentioned. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So it's time for us to take a very, very short break. But when we come back, we have another exciting segment that is Quickfire. And we're just going to check on how quick and how smart maybe our guest is, because the questions are very hilarious. So you don't want to miss. Do stay with us. Don't touch that dial. All right, welcome back to the show. And now it's time for another amazing, interesting and fun segment of Quickfire. So now we will find out just how smart and quick our guest is. So, what happened when the wheel was invented? What happened when the wheel was invented?
The inventors.
You were getting it right. You keep on going.
You guys,
Give it a try.
I told you this thing is what I don't like now.
Well, it caused a revolution. Yes?
Yes.
All right then, let's go to question number 2. There are 8 men sitting on a couch. 3 legs break and 6 men leave. How many legs are remaining? You can do it, you can do it. It's a very simple math.
4.
Aha! Very close, however. 5. The legs of the 2 remaining 4 men and the remaining couch leg. Remember, the men also had their legs included. All right, this one is an easy one, I promise. What is white and black but red all over? What is white and black but red all over? Think about it. Think about what you do. Maybe as you're on your way to work, you often
Tissue paper.
read something. The newspaper, because it's red all over. It's black
You guys,
and white.
I told you, me, I don't like this.
All right, then this one is the easiest, I promise. Which room has no walls? Which room has no walls? You can do it. Don't overthink it.
Pass. All my questions are pass.
A mushroom. A mushroom has no walls. It's a room. Okay, fine. And finally, why can't a woman living in Europe be buried in Canada? Why can't a woman living in Europe be buried in Canada?
Because Canada is not in Europe.
You know, I'm tempted to say you got that one right, even though you didn't.
No. Me, I said I don't want this Brahman.
Well, the answer is a living woman cannot be buried anywhere. Well,
No, now, you see now, this one I said I don't like it.
no, but you did very well. You did you had fun, right?
I had fun, but I was not ready for this now.
I think the key and the goal and the aim was just to really have a little bit of fun. But once again, thank you so much. I think, Mr. Ben, you've been very resourceful and very informative in terms of retirement, and even young people and entrepreneurs can begin to plan for their retirement based on what they are currently earning and streams that they can start to tap into right now, so that when they do retire, when we do retire actually, we have a solid plan put together. So thank you so much once again for gracing this show, and we hope to be investors that are planned and well organized. And you, the viewer at home, let us know what exactly you learned from this particular episode. Leave your comments and sending in your text messages to 40920. Let us know what kind of investment you are going to start doing in order to plan for your retirement. I've been your host, Lucy Riley, and this has been Millionaire's Mind.